What's the worst example of overbearing parents you've ever seen? My mother-in-law. She is always telling absolutely everyone she meets what to do and how to do it. She gets mad if they do it wrong. When I first met my wife at university, she would get a phone call from her mother every day. Every day it would reduce her to tears because her mother would criticize everything she did. I have seen her ask my wife to cut some carrots, then scream at her because she was cutting them wrong. My wife developed anorexia during her teenage years due to the constant harassment from her mother. She made her feel like she was useless. My wife is about as far from useless as you can get. She is the most caring, friendly, imaginative, determined and all-round amazing person I have ever met. The first time she met my mother she cried because she was so nice to her. The thing is, the mother-in-law, as I have learned through careful observation, is actually trying to be nice. She's just awful at it. She tells people how to do things to improve their lives, but doesn't understand that the way she does it is indistinguishable from abuse. A few years back, when I was 19, I was at a party with a few of my friends. Everybody went out to a club but one girl who was 17. Didn't have any and would have been too drunk anyway. I'd known her and her family for a few years. Her mom knew my family and I took it upon myself to see that she got home safe. So I paid for both of us to get a taxi back to hers, which wasn't that far away. My plan was to head back to the club afterwards. When we got back to her place, she couldn't find her key, so I knocked the door and her mom came down. I smiled and said I think she's had a little bit too much. Just thought I'd make sure she got home safe. Her mom's reaction completely blew me away. She said get inside now to her daughter and then you two to me. She sat us both down in the living room and started screaming at us and accusing me of trying to take advantage of her daughter. I pointed out that if I had been, I wouldn't have brought her back to the house that I knew her mom would be in and then knocked the door. This only made her angrier. She was calling her daughter a disgrace and calling me a pervert, so I got up and left. The next day, my mom gets a phone call from her mom telling her version of events and how I tried to lure her daughter home and how she thought I might have drugged her. Completely psychotic. Thankfully my mom was 100% on my side and knew I'd never do something like that. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. Mine. I'm not allowed to play more than 3 hours of video games a week or buy my own computer. They block my phone at 9:00 bedtime and track me through my phone wherever I go. They also forbid me from talking to strangers on the internet. Huh. You're not alone. From when I was 13-17 my parents would block the Wi-Fi on my phone at 10 PM. Thankfully it reset itself at midnight and I could get back online. 20-year-old female friend has a driver license but is forbidden to drive because it's too dangerous on the roads. Also has a 9 PM curfew and is not allowed to wear anything above knees. I feel like an butthole for posting this because I love my mom dearly, but I need to get it out. My mom was super controlling while I was growing up. Once I was old enough to want to pick out my own clothes, she would take me to the mall, fight with me for hours because she didn't approve of anything I liked, and we would go home empty-handed. She would then go shopping herself and buy me clothes that she found acceptable. By high school, I had a hidden stash of stuff I liked. It was really just band t-shirts and crap. Nothing crazy, and would change once I left the house. I was washing my stuff once while she was at work, forgot it was in the washer and ran down later that night to get it. Gone. All of it. She denied ever seeing it, but I know she threw it away. Once I got a job, the day I turned 16, I started buying my own clothes. The stuff she didn't like would accidentally end up bleached. She really loves to help me, but strings are always attached. Oh, you like that dress? Let me get it for you, but in the wrong size, because I prefer your clothes not to be fitted. Oh, let me get you a new living room set, but I'll pick it out myself. That kinda crap. I finally just stopped accepting anything. I love my mom to death. I really do. She's been there for me my entire life, even when I had a period of time that I was freaking up big. She and my dad paid for my schooling through my master's degree. She's an amazing mom, but so goddamn critical. Now since she has no control over me, she criticizes me every chance she gets. Like on Mother's Day this year, we all went to my aunt's house to grill out. I wore a casual t-shirt with a cotton skirt. She literally had not made it through the door before she was criticizing my choice in outfits. Why don't you just go change into shorts? A skirt isn't necessary. I told her nah, I liked what I had on. And she told me it was completely inappropriate. When we got to my aunt's, both of my cousins were wearing dresses. So I loudly informed them I liked their outfits. And that I was glad we could all be so inappropriate together. It's maddening. If you read this, thanks for listening. If I were to punch someone in the face over and over again, that would make me in butthole. If I gave them $1 after each punch, I'd still be in butthole. Oh mine, here we go. When I was 14, my mom installed a monitoring software on my computer so she could see my screen on her laptop to make sure I was doing homework. I didn't know about this until I watched Really Kinky Intense P and I got screamed at from downstairs. When I was 18, I got my nose pierced. Told her that I did it, and she freaked out and said she did not got me permission to do that and wait until dad hears about this. Dad hears about it and doesn't give a crap because I am an adult. I am 19 and decide to go to the movies at 10 PM. Chaos. At 19/20 she knew my iTunes password for some reason and obsessively used Find My iPhone to track my location. My older brother witnessed her just constantly tracking my location for no apparent reason. One time I was in my boyfriend's basement and I get 10 missed calls from her because it said I was in the middle of a field. When I figured out how to turn it off, she would not shut up about it for months and would try to guilt me into turning it back on. Said it was because she cared. Sorry for caring. Dad lets me track his phone. When I first getting to know my boyfriend when I was 20, I got really drunk one night and fell asleep until 2 PM. I wake up to 20 missed calls and ignore them because I was going home anyway. I start driving home and pass my mom's car on the way back to my house. Turns out she called the freaking police and was driving to his house to find me. I never gave her his address. Got it from tracking my phone. Another reason I disabled Find My iPhone. I wasn't allowed to have my car at college for my entire junior year because they didn't trust me with it. I've driven since 2014 and have never had any incidents for them to not trust me. I wasn't able to get a job, go grocery shopping, or really have a life because of it. When I had my first boyfriend when I was 15, we were hanging out in my basement to play video games, and my mom was sitting in a corner the entire time watching us. Said I was driving to Atlantic City an hour and a half away for an anime convention when I was 20. Tried insisting on driving me and my friends and listed crime statistics to me and basically said I would get mugged. She didn't let my brother learn how to ride a bike until he was 13 because she was afraid of him injuring himself. Boy, that's just what I can think of from the top of my head. Luckily I won't get cut off for ignoring her crazy and doing what I want. My college advisor and I sat in a conference room with them on speakerphone and my CA basically acted as a mediator. They handed over the password when I agreed to let them read my apps before I sent them in. I then changed the password and they tried to get it out of my advisor even though I complied with the arrangement. Total BS. I also filled out 26 apps because it was easier to just do it rather than have them say, well, obviously you don't care about your future, and then argue. I then filled out so many apps that the Common App wouldn't allow me to fill out anymore. When I told my parents this, they said something like, "Do you think we can call the Common App and ask them to make an exception?" That was my breaking point. I was done and told them absolutely not. We didn't talk for 1.5 months after. Totally worth it. They are good PPL, but that was insane. I know a girl that even at like 18 she wasn't allowed to leave her driveway on a bike and couldn't cross the road to get the paper. I am pretty sure they loosen up though. We lived out in the country where you could go hours without seeing a car go by. Was sitting in my living room earlier today having a discussion about a celebrity's height. Told him to Google it, to which he proceeded to ask my mom if it was okay. I was like, WTF, Google it, but I need permission first. So yeah, that's kinda overbearing. Joke's on you, he actually went to Disney.com now that he finally got a parent's permission. Helicopter parenting is sadly the norm nowadays. I had friends in high school back in the mid-2000s who weren't allowed to leave the house past where their parents could see them from the windows in high school when they were 16-18. There was a news story recently that teenagers are getting the same amount of physical activity as people in their 60s, and I immediately thought of this kind of crap. Kids are not getting any exercise because their parents won't let them play outside. I guess it wasn't overbearing because I was only 6, but I remember having to shout at my friend's house across the street for him to come outside and play because I wasn't allowed to cross a never busy residential street to knock. The parent who recruited friends for their kid. I was at college orientation and one parent came up to my friend and said, "That girl over there is my daughter. You go up to her and introduce yourself to her and be her friend." I don't like people with crazy parents. My aunt cutting up her son's dinner for him when he was 12. Also telling everyone that her ex-husband was an unfit father and shouldn't have custody because he didn't check his 12 and 15-year-old son's school bags every morning. He just left it up to them to pack the right books, which occasionally led to one of them forgetting something and getting detention. She thought this was unforgivably neglectful. We thought it was freaking normal. A rich girl at my college used to semi-regularly borrow my old butt truck. We were friends and my vehicle was worth maybe $1,000, so I didn't care. We were in agriculture type programs and I'd honestly just assumed she used it when she didn't want to trash her 40k pickup hauling nastiness. It always came back with a full tank, so whatever. I eventually learned that her truck had a GPS tracker on it and her parents watched it like a hawk. She would get screamed at and threatened with being financially cut off if the vehicle went somewhere they didn't approve of, or just stayed too long somewhere, like Walmart, or was out too late. So, got a midnight craving for Waffle House while studying? Let's drive the old pose. Afternoon at the lake? Go to borrow a car or ride with someone. Note, this was back when personal GPS was brand new and phones were still dumb. I can only imagine what her folks would have done if she'd had a smartphone. And I thought not being able to go outside of the neighborhood without a friend, parent, relative, etc. until I was 12 was overprotective. It depends on what they mean by neighborhood. Giving a kid a boundary a few blocks away doesn't sound unreasonable. A kid in my school wasn't allowed to join our band because my causal farmer parents didn't force me to go to church and therefore my family was labeled sinners. I became an electrician and started a family and he knocked up his girlfriend after high school and was stealing gasoline in a refueling truck and selling it to the Hutterites. That kid had so much pressure on him to go to a nice Bible college after school, but I think he just eventually strayed away from his parents to avoid them making all his decisions for him. I had a friend who wasn't allowed to have a PlayStation 2 because he needed to focus on his schoolwork. We were 7 years old. In real life, the most overbearing and controlling parents I've witnessed are my own. My dad is pretty passive about everything, to be honest, but my mother is a nightmare. Last week she staged an intervention with a lot of extended family for me having anorexia. I'm above average weight for my height. She is just so jealous that I'm healthy and she isn't, so she tells the world that I'm sick and she is the hero that saves me from myself because she arranged it. In front of our whole family she gets to talk about how she supports me and wants to help me. Frick off. She wants me to be fat like her so she can tell herself being healthy is impossible. That was the most ashamed I've ever felt. My entire extended family thinks I'm starving myself when in reality I just count calories and work out. She likes to think of me as an extension of herself. I can't have my own opinions, thoughts, feelings, plans, hobbies, anything. I am her but younger and male. Also somehow better because she wants to live vicariously through my achievements as well. She gets mad when I play video games or go to the gym because that isn't what she sees me as. Because she doesn't like those things. Therefore I can't. But she wants to take credit when I get a good grade and go on about how proud she is, when really she is just proud of herself. Furthermore, she is emotionally manipulative and unstable. She will get drunk then call me a selfish dickhead. So I'll say stop. You're being mean, and then she'll cry and make me apologize for upsetting her, affirming her belief that I'm an butthole. Being near her takes a toll on me. You need to move out soon and as far away as possible. My friend's aunt. Her 2 kids are on the autistic spectrum, and they are on the high functioning end at that. Given the appropriate help in fostering independence and the like, they would have integrated easily into society, but this woman proves there is such a thing as too much help. Why I said kids is because they are 36 and 34 respectively, and yet they are unable to do the most simple tasks without having her get in the mix. Witnessing this firsthand when I went to their house because my friend wanted company while over there one time. Her aunt had to cut the crusts off their sandwiches because they apparently were incapable of it from the years upon years of her doing every dang thing for them and not letting them grow as human beings simply because of their diagnosis of both. Her heart has always been in the right place and she's a sweet woman, but she suffers from the times she's used to and the lack of information to have proved her wrong about their condition when it was truly critical, and even now. She knows little about the disorders. I do hope that, God forbid, when she dies someday, those two will be able to still live somehow without their mother : My sister trying to have a conversation with my 12-year-old nephew, her son, while he is on the toilet doing number 2. B. Can't you shut the heck up for 5 minutes and let that boy take a crap in peace? So inconsiderate. Reading this thread has made me realize that there is a large portion of the parent population who don't realize that abuse is not always physical. A friend of mine in high school used to invite me over to her house so that she could eat sugar. Her parents decided that she was too fat, a great thing to tell a 15-year-old girl BTW, and eliminated all sugar in the house, as well as bread and a few other things. They would constantly talk about her in a negative way in front of everyone, including her friends. She weighed too much, her grades weren't good enough, she wasn't pretty enough. But other than that, I think they wanted everyone to think that they were normal, good parents, and so gave her a lot of freedom in front of other people. If I was over, then she was allowed to walk down to a nearby cafe with me so that I could eat the forbidden foods, but they'd pull her aside before she left and tell her that she needed to make good choices while out of the house. We'd go down to the cafe, she'd buy a mug of tea, and then she would shove as many French vanilla coffee creamers into my bag as she could fit. I'd buy a pastry of some kind and tip very generously. The people at the cafe knew her and her parents, so I think they took pity on her and let her take them. We'd go back to her house and go up to her room under the guise of doing homework, and we'd hide her contraband sugar. She was also given a 9 PM bedtime until our senior year of high school. She was forced into singing lessons even when she didn't want to, and her mother made her learn piano. She was allowed 1 hour of TV a day and could only listen to it at the lowest volume possible because it would damage her hearing otherwise. She could only use her computer in the living room or dining room where her parents could see what she was doing and read over her shoulder, and she could only have half an hour of non-homework, 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 hour of non-homework. That was a house rule, actually, and one I didn't adhere to because I've never used fruit wash in my life. And her parents were just horrified. Her dad would snatch fruit and veg out of my hands before I could eat them and properly wash them for me if I hadn't used the dang fruit wash. I swear her mother almost fainted when I ate a grape out of the package one time without washing it at all. Even beyond that, they were just weird people. Their house didn't feel right. It was very personalized in that they had personal things, pictures they'd taken, paintings and artwork, a metric fuck ton of books. But everything was styled. It felt like I was on a movie set almost, and that these were set dressings. Everything was just so perfect and nothing was out of place, though it wasn't exactly neat and tidy. It was so freaking bizarre. TLDR. No sugar, fruit wash, and I'm not convinced they weren't aliens. Report cards at my school went out today. A parent of one of our students freaked out cause her daughter will never become a doctor with marks like these. Her daughter will be starting kindergarten next year. When I was in high school, my curfew was 9 PM regardless of what day it was. Every Wednesday I would go to church with friends. I always told my mother the same thing. Church ends at 9. We'll stop by Burger King after for dinner and I'll be home no later than 10. And every time I'd get home just before 10 and have to bang on the door until my dad woke up and let me in. I had to sleep on the porch a few times because no one would let me in. The strangest part was that my mother was a super fanatical Christian, so you'd think she would have been all for me going to church every Wednesday night, but apparently she thought I was off doing drugs or having sex or some other bulls. Mine are pretty bad. They take away the phone I bought. Don. T let me use my tablet. Passwords on every device but my phone. Block things on my Xbox account. I have to ask them to log the computer on to do even homework. And I get yelled at if I so much as connect to a store's Wi-Fi network. It may have all started due to some pee on my first smartphone, but like, what teenage boy doesn't do that alone in their own room? A mate of mine's mum was particularly overbearing a few years ago when we went on holiday vacation. We were 19 at the time and were in Ibiza for 10 days. Turns out this guy's mum was taking his wages off him and drip feeding him a limited amount whenever he would want to buy something or go for a drink. So we all had our money split between cash and a debit card type thing we got from the travel company to keep the rest of our euros on. After a few days my mate has spent all his cash and has to go to an ATM to lift some money. No money on his card. He spent the next 2 hours on the phone home to ask his mum to transfer more money onto his card. She eventually agrees but then doesn't transfer the money for 2 days. He had to borrow money from the rest of us so we could all go out and party the next 2 nights. It was pretty crappy for my mate to have to go through all that with his mates sitting there waiting on him. And I think she's still like that with him now, even though we're a good few years older. Dude, holy crap, my friend had the same problem. His mom and stepdad would collect the money that he earned at his job in an envelope in their bedroom because one time he spent like $5 on something without asking them. These people are batshit crazy. Dad had a friend and his wife and daughter come over and go on our boat. Daughter was around my age. I think I was 13. I also have a friend over who is 14. We are kids. After boat ride they hang out on the boat but I convince girl to come with me and my friend cause we are getting in the pool. She hesitantly jumps in and we are having fun. Her dad comes up and talks to her a bit and she gets out and basically stays at his side for another 30 minutes and they leave. Parents told me later that she was in serious trouble for swimming unsupervised with 2 boys. I was freaking 13. Wish I could have checked up on her later in life or whatever. She was nice. There are lots of examples of parents being overbearing on their own children. Here's another take on it. Take all the stories you are reading here. A mom that won't let their kid watch Harry Potter because witchcraft. Or a mom that won't let their kid stay outdoors too long. Or won't let their teen leave their yard. A dad who pushes the kid to sports, more sports, and nothing but sports. That will hurl insults at them for not winning. Now imagine that overbearing parent not only doing that to their own children, but to every other child in the neighborhood. Yeah, that's what I grew up with. My mom was the woman who would call the police if there were kids outside after 6 p.m. on a summertime Friday, or if they were outside unsupervised. This was back in the 1980s. Everyone was outside unsupervised back then. She campaigned to have books removed from the school curriculum and school libraries and usually won. They would call the police if she found any bookstores still selling the book. She ended the option of having kids walk to school, forcing the school department to have buses and bus stops for kids who lived, literally, right next door to the school. My dad would berate my friends for spending time outside playing if we weren't playing real sports. Soccer wasn't real and would insult anyone who was losing a game. He became a member of the school board just so he could bring about an end to non-athletic extracurricular activities at the high school and to refocus the school towards athletic programs. My best friend's mom wouldn't let her answer the phone so she could screen the calls. On several occasions she pretended to be my friend on the phone and probed me for info on what bad things her daughter was doing. She was often not allowed to come out and play for no reason whatsoever. Years later she confessed to her boyfriend that her mom took all of her inheritance from her grandparents and made her take out student loans so her mom could get that money. She never finished her college and was racked with debt and not able to move out on her own, even if that was allowed. Finally at 25 her longtime boyfriend took her in and they are no contact with her family now. I used to run a horse riding school. One mother asked if I had sons. I don't, and demanded that I ensure no boys were scheduled for lessons or to be on property at all. She'd graciously allowed the toddler younger siblings of some riders. During the time her daughter came for horse riding lessons, she went on to say she wanted to book her daughter in for our school holiday 3-day horse riding camp, but she'd bring her each morning and take her home each evening instead of letting her sleep over with the other kids. She demanded to be told should any boy be booked into the camp so she could withdraw her daughter from it. I felt so sorry for that girl but refused to not allow boys to book and during those time slots, so she pulled her daughter out of lessons with me altogether not long afterward, for which I was grateful. That's how you raise someone who is afraid of boys and will never talk to them. I have a ton of stories if anyone is interested, but my mom tried giving me a 10 o'clock curfew when I was moving my stuff into my new apartment the night before my wedding. Also, she called a friend's mom and asked her if her son would take me to prom. I didn't ask her to. She knew I had a crush on him. I couldn't look at him for weeks, I was so embarrassed. Ooh yes, my years of living in a small evangelical town will finally pay off. Back when my parents were crazy and overbearing, my siblings and I weren't allowed to watch SpongeBob or other Disney shows because they were sin. I think I watched basic kids shows with my baby siblings until about 10 or 11. My MP3 player would be checked to see if I was on the Christian station. I just switched to it before they looked. My sister and I got banned from playing Club Penguin by my parents because it was a social platform. I've been called a S by my mom whenever I wear things that look too short. I have really long legs so most things look short. My parents insisted on having all my passwords. My sister was smart and just made 2 accounts for everything. One time my sister sent her friend a meme late at night and my mom was convinced she was sending nudes. Same sister also was previously accused of this in like 7th grade for some reason. Boys aren't allowed upstairs, except for my sister and her boyfriend. Lucky me, I'm a lesbian. I had friends who couldn't go to dances because it was seen as too intimate to possibly dance with someone and a sin. When my parents became significantly less Christian, the few somewhat friends I had weren't allowed to hang out with me. A girl literally gave me a note from her mom saying that my family strayed from God's path or something. This was like 4th grade. I got told by my friend's parents that playing mermaids with my friend was sinful. We got in trouble. Same parents also tried to educate me about how the dinosaurs were fake and put there by the devil to trick people. Luckily I was a smart kid who liked science. Friends with a girl who I think was Mormon. She was super nice. Always had to wear longer skirts with leggings though. You would know if her dad was out of town because she would wear shorts or something. I laughed at the sending a meme part. If my mom ever saw my friends' cars in my neighborhood, she would chase them down with her car to make sure I wasn't in their car. She sent my sister and I both to therapists when my sister was 7 and when I was 16, and wrote long letters before every session about what we'd done wrong between appointments. Both times, the therapists told my mom that she seemed to have control issues and that we weren't troubled or problem children like she claimed. She used to constantly make comments about our weight, even when I was a size 00. She actually kept all of the desserts in our house in a locked toolbox in the freezer so we couldn't eat anything sweet. When my sister and I eventually figured out the combo, we were left home alone a lot. My mom got a bike lock and wrapped it between the freezer and fridge door handles to try to keep us out. It didn't really occur to her that we could just open both. LOL. I'm 25 and she still won't take herself off of my bank account. She monitors it regularly and makes snide comments if I spend any money on alcohol or at bars. She took away my phone so much that during the summer after my freshman year of college, I wrote a long list of all of my friends' phone numbers and hid it in my drawer. My junior year of college, I went out on New Year's and didn't text or call her the next day because my phone had been stolen the night before. Around noon, one of my friends came up to me and said my mom, who she'd never spoken to or heard about in her life, was on the phone for me. She has repeatedly told me that my past present boyfriend's families weren't going to be impressed with me because of insert relevant character flaws, that I'm going to get fired from my first real job, that she wouldn't want to be friends with me if she were my age, and that she can tell I'm going to become an alcoholic drug addict one day. I've never gotten in trouble with alcohol and hardly even drink anymore, and I don't even do drugs. You can open a new bank account. Reading all these posts, I'm glad my parents were as lazy as they were. The only rules were don't get arrested, don't break any bones, be home for dinner if you want to eat. My aunt and uncle, they sent their crotch goblin to the school my mum works at, probs in the hope of getting some preferential treatment. Kid is an utter pain in the ass, getting into fights and doing poorly in all his classes except sports because he has a natural flair for it. My aunt and uncle are told repeatedly that they needed to impress on this kid that academics were important, but they just told the school they weren't treating him right and giving him enough chance to prove himself. They had him tested for every learning disability out there. Nothing. Kid's just thick as crap. But they won't accept it and try and blame it on my mum and try to get her fired by accusing her of meddling with the kid's scores because they had this delusion that she was jealous of their success. Suckers. Anyway, they pulled him out and now pay about £30,000 a year on a school suited to his talents. Basically he gets a trophy every week and gives his parents the sense of superiority they crave. The kid will either grow up to be an athlete or will take over his parents' company. Freaking hate the lot of them. Here's to hoping he's a successful athlete, because I'd feel sorry for the employees when he runs that company into the ground. I was watching one of those daytime court shows and there was a case of a man, 20 years old, suing his stepmom. I forget what the case was, but the judge asked for some backstory. The stepmom said when she came into the picture, the stepson was on medication for ADHD. She said she didn't believe in medication for that and took him off the pills. The stepmom then went in to explain she used Hoopin for medicine, and when he acted up in school and got bad grades, because, you know, ADHD does that, she would go to school with him and sit in his classes to make sure he was paying attention. TLDR. Stepmom took stepson off ADHD medication, whooped and embarrassed him for acting out. I know a young woman who stood by the candy shelf in a grocery store obviously choosing something to buy. Another woman and her daughter came up to her and said, "Would you please step away from that shelf? My daughter is not allowed to see an adult woman buying unhealthy treats for herself. You must understand I don't want her to find out about candy, as she is only allowed to eat fruit. So weird. If your child, who probably soon gonna find out and get diabetes from all those restrictions, is not allowed to look at adults buying sweets, then why are you bringing her to a grocery store? Oh gosh." This was a while ago. Back when my siblings and I were in elementary school, we had this thing called quiet time. What was quiet time? Well, it only happened in the summer. We all were locked in our rooms for 1 hour and weren't allowed to do anything. Every day. My mom's logic was that she needed at least 1 hour a day to herself, which is understandable. But this was more of a punishment to us than a time to herself. We weren't allowed to leave our rooms, talk, use anything with a screen, even if it was muted, make noise. If we were outside playing at the time, she would call us in. So it was time out. If she really wanted time to herself, then, for God's sake, let us play outside or at least put the Game Boy on mute. God, that's torture. One of my friends couldn't drink water by himself, without a parent in the room, until he was 8. Totally normal guy. He is a partier now, but B has had no special needs or anything like that. My 18-year-old friend is only allowed to get her hair cut once a year, and when she does it only gets cut a couple inches. Nothing drastic. She's also not allowed to dye her hair. Her mom's reason? She ruined her hair when she was younger and her hair doesn't grow past shoulder length well and she misses long hair, so she's living through her daughter. Also, she's been dating the same guy for almost 2 years. When they're at her house, they are not allowed to be in any room of the house alone. I don't even think he's allowed in her room at all. I know of a guy who's a manager for a small chain. A girl comes in, she's a college student, and has bright pink hair. Everything checked out, and the manager offered her the job as long as she changed the hair. She left. Manager gets a call from mom screaming at him about discrimination and that she'll call the police if he doesn't hire her. This is a grown woman. I was teaching, and professor, and first week of classes a young man's mom asked to speak with me during office hours. Said her son really needed to register for my class even though it was closed. I really didn't mind. One student over the limit doesn't bother me. Anyway, the student never showed up to class, slept through when he did, and eventually he failed with a big fat F. I wonder how having meddling, overbearing helicopter parents affected his motivation and academic skills and preparation. A friend of mine, his mother got a job at his school so she could be his teacher and be in the know about all his assessment, then go home and do it for him. He has gone on to do engineering degree at university and now his mother has almost completed his degree. I'm so proud of her. I mean him. Oh, and there was the 2 free cars she bought him. That guy played to the divorce like a master. My sister went on a school skiing trip during the second to last year of high school. One of the girls who she was sharing a room with would always disappear into their room when it was free time. My sister finds out that this girl spends every free hour she has studying with her parents on the phone, not saying anything, just making sure she was actually studying. Bearing in mind this was in France and the girl's parents were in UK. Tried to get my friends at church to play RuneScape, which was going well until a mother sent an email to everyone saying it was evil and had witchcraft. Then I was back to playing alone. See. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.